said the first one now.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast, Everything Dogs. I'm your host, Daniel Stuckert, and my co-host today is Miss Brett Bauer.
What's going on, Daddy?
Hey, I am enjoying life and all that good stuff. But before we go there, we are going to talk about today proper introductions to dogs. There's a lot of misconceptions on how to introduce dogs together, so we figured we'd do kind of a brief synopsis of it, and you could probably see some of the do's and don'ts you've already done.
There's lots of do's and don'ts with this that I've seen live.
Yeah, I know for sure.
Yeah.
But before we get started, well, I haven't seen you in a while. You've been traveling, so how have you been?
Well, it's been a very eventful week. We kind of had, everything when it rains, it pours. So we just had a few mishaps kind of happen. With the pups, we were coming back for a trip, and my one little Chihuahua, she has this happen usually like once a year. Like I get their anal glands extracted.
Sure.
Billy doesn't need it, but Dobby does for some reason, and so it got inflamed and it ruptured and it burst, and so we had to bring her in and get it all cleaned out and do all that.
That sounds painful, but it sounds disgusting.
Yeah, well, she was doing the boot scoot, and I was like, that's kind of weird. Why is she doing the boot scoot? I'm like, and so then it was like nothing, and then the next day it was like enlarged and purple and swollen, and she was in pain, and I couldn't go near it. So
time to get it fixed.
So we got her booty hole fixed. We're all good now.
Just so, and for people that aren't aware that dogs have anal glands, and when they get plugged, a lot of times you'll see dogs like scoot across grass. You'll see them pulling it. So basically, in these glands, they can get filled up with matter, and they naturally express themselves. Little dogs sometimes need them expressed because they don't naturally express, and inside is all that fecal matter and disgusting stuff. And so if it's not natural releasing, you have to have it done, or if you know how to do it yourself.
Yeah.
But in a case like this, where it actually sounds like it got inflamed, infected, it can cause, a really uncomfortable situation for your pup, and it can actually get very serious if not taken care of right away.
Exactly. Yeah. Cause they will naturally secrete. But for some reason hers have always had this issue. So about once a year, we usually have to get him secreted. Gotcha. Yeah. So it kind of happened prematurely, but yeah, when I saw that, I was like, oh, I just can't imagine that kind of pain back there. So
no, it's kind of like, yeah, probably like having cramps, I'd imagine, but worse.
Yeah, a little worse, but yeah, so she's all good. Billy had her teeth cleaned. We did a manual cleaning this time since she can't go under for, anesthesia. So she is good. Her grill's all clean. Good. And we're all spanking new.
Well, good. Well, sounds like we had some positive stuff in there too, so that's good.
Yes. Okay. Always keep it a positive, no matter what, right?
Exactly. Okay. Well, enough about our lives. Let's talk about proper introductions. And I see a lot of people do this in person, and obviously you see it in person too. First and foremost, a lot of people, they meet other dogs with their dog. They tend to, obviously they're meeting on a leash most of the time, and they don't do any type of, I guess what I would say, type of work beforehand. They just kind of let the dogs run up to each other and kind of go into a sniff fest. And sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it's not okay. There are much better ways to do it, because unfortunately with that, sometimes dogs take offense to that, and it can turn into a fight or snapping or a bunch of other negative things. And so, that's not the best way to introduce dogs.
Exactly. And just to kind of add on to that, not even if the dogs are being introduced, but if you're approaching a dog that's new to you, what to do and what not to do, because I've seen some bad situations with that as well. But yes.
Yeah, we can definitely cover that too. Yeah, we can definitely cover that too. We'll talk about that. I saw this, it was interesting. Actually, I saw a very well-known internet dog trainer say something that I was just like, what? I was like, I was very surprised. And it was about how to meet a new dog. And what he said to me was not something I would personally do. When I was listening to the video, I was like, what?
Did it say like, take your pants off? And
no, that I do.
Circle?
No, that I would do.
I was going to say,
no,
yeah.
No, but basically, we'll start there. If you're meeting a new dog and it's just you and there's a dog on a leash. And a lot of people, you know, they have no common sense when they see a dog. They lose their marbles. It's a dog. And so first and foremost, when you're meeting a dog, first and foremost, don't stare at the dog in the eyes because that could be a challenge. Don't smile at them like, because you're baring your teeth. They could take that the wrong way depending on the dog. So basically, when you're going to meet a new dog with their owner, so to speak, don't rush them. Meet at a comfortable distance. Talk to the owner, kind of ignore the dog, then let the dog come to you. Don't encroach on the dog. And when you get close to the dog, don't try to pat the dog on the head.
Stick your whole hand out like this with your fingers.
Well, not even that, but when you're patting on the head, basically what you're doing, it's a dominant behavior. And so a lot of people do that, or they drop down on their knees and they put their face right next to the dog. These are things you want to avoid because not every dog is going to be sweet.
No,
now, you could probably get away with this 90% of the time, but there's going to be 10% of the time that it's just not going to work. So I'm always about do it safe every time and have a little protection. Now, a lot of people, when you see them, they're like, hey, I want to meet their dog. And they stick their hand out like this. Okay. That's the quickest way to get your hand chomped on, and makes no sense to me. And I see professional dog trainers do that. I'm like, I don't quite understand why you would ever put something. I've seen, in fact, I just saw a video of Caesar. It's an old one, but he stuck his hand like that and the dog just latched onto him.
Yeah.
Made no sense to me. Yeah. He's not the other dog trainer I was talking about, but that's another story.
Yeah.
So anyway, when you're ever going to meet a dog, it's all right to put a fist out just like this, or a fist at your side, because when they're sniffing you, if they do decide to give you a little love bite, there's nothing, no extremities hanging out to bite on and tear off or do anything. They have a fist. That's all they can do. So if you're standing there and the dog is sniffing you and you put your hand out, keep it in the fist like this, let them sniff and all that too. And if you make it past all those tests and everything's going good and you get the licks, then it's okay to open up your hand and to pet them underneath their neck or what have you. But don't just think because a dog looks sweet and is friendly that it's automatically going to like your advance.
Oh yeah. But I think what you said too is really talking to the owner first. I'd be like, I always ask, are they friendly? Is is it okay if we approach you? All that kind of stuff. Because some people, like said, they don't do any of that. And I've seen things go down,
You know what? The worst thing I think I've ever seen is, I was actually in Florida on vacation, and I was actually, with somebody I knew actually, and he has German Shepherds, and they're very nice, well-trained dogs. And, we're near the beach and we were talking, and this woman came up who was just annihilated. I mean, like completely drunk, kind of like you get, but, but
it's only on Saturday night.
But anyway, she's like, hey, how are you guys at it? The whole drunk slurred speech thing. We're like, yeah, we're fine. Thanks. Oh, how cute these dogs are. She didn't ask. She ran over and grabbed his male by the face. It's like, oh, like kind of like, oh, you're so sweet. That dog whacked her. And it happened so quick. We didn't have time to like get the dogs away or anything like that. So
then I hope she's not trying to sue them or go against the dog, because that's happened before,
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. But just because here you are trying to enjoy yourself, and somebody, because they're inebriated, and you don't have to be inebriated for this to happen, obviously, but it's one of those scenarios where these dogs are super friendly, but they felt threatened because it was such an aggressive action in their mind to kind of lunge at them and grab one by the face. Yeah. She's actually lucky she didn't get bit by both of them.
Yeah.
Cause again, it happened in a millisecond because we didn't expect her just to drop down and grab the dog's face.
Like this. Sorry.
Yeah.
My headphones just fell off. Sorry, guys. No, so hold on. No, but it's crazy because I've seen that happen too, but it's not even like the I've seen it just with any kind of spastic type of movements, even if they're not, if it's an adult. I've seen it with like children. My dogs will get like, and they'll latch out because they're like, it's just too much energy all at once. Could be very sudden. Could be a lot of different
things.
Yeah.
And again, not all dogs are going to react in this type of scenario, but that's again. So just to reiterate, we're talking about when you're meeting a dog solo, so to speak. And most of you that are probably watching this podcast don't do these dumb things, but if you have friends that do these dumb things, make sure you allow the dog to come to you. Don't pat the dog on the head. Don't drop down to the dog's level. Respect the dog in a distance. Talk to the owner before you do it. You want to make sure you have all these types of things in place. You know, even like when I meet new dogs, I don't just run up to them. Even I'm around dogs all the time. I can read a dog, but you just never know, and so you don't want to take that chance.
No, exactly. Yeah, I've seen someone's hand get bit off doing exactly what you said by not doing the fist and letting them smell and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, and nobody wants to lose a digit or two.
no.
So, that being said, don't do that. So that's a proper way to meet a dog, in our opinion. Again, it's not the only way, but it's to me, it's worked for 25 plus years and it's been very safe and it goes really good and dogs respond well to it. And if you're not getting a good response, you can always just walk away, back away, and you have all your digits intact.
Yep, we want to keep our digits,
So
especially
now,
the middle one.
yeah, well, that's because we use that in Atlanta traffic.
We do.
So the next scenario we're going to talk about is leash on leash meeting with people. So um, we're going to take a scenario. Most people say you're walking in the park and you're approaching another dog on a leash and you're on your dog with a leash. Um, Not everybody has the same skill levels as a handler. And so if that dog is barking and all excited and all that, and the owner's having a hard time controlling them, you need to be aware that it might not be the best time to introduce your dogs because there's so little control and frustration is already built on the other dog. Um, that's a scenario I've seen too, where somebody, their dog wants to get to the other dog so bad because maybe it's a younger dog and it's just spasmatic, whatever. And the owner doesn't correct it and put it into a position where it's in a calm, neutral type meeting place. It doesn't, that can turn into a really, bad scenario quickly. And so for me in a scenario like that, just I would turn around and walk the other way and just say, hey, let's let them meet when they're calm. Something, you don't want to offend somebody, but you also don't want to, again, put your dog in the position where something negative can happen, or your dog will do something negative because it feels threatened or hurt or what have you.
No, exactly. And it's that it's the territorial thing too. I mean, that's the biggest thing that I've seen is actually if they're not on common ground. That's another.
Yeah. Well, again, yeah, if they're not in neutral territory, that could be, or maybe the dog's a resource guard and it's resource guarding their human. That happens too.
Food or treats, yeah.
Yeah, and it can happen with multiple scenarios. And again, down here we have a lot of cool things. We have something called the Beltline. We have the Silver Comet Trails. And these places are like, I mean, it's a mass of humanity: dogs, people, scooters, bicycles, rollerbladers, music, everything. And I mean, it's really super cool. But when you get that many people and that many different things happening at one time, if you're not on top of your toes in your game, negative things could happen because an animal can be startled and latch out, and then it's your fault. So, when you're meeting people, just always be aware of your surroundings too. That's going to make a big difference, especially in a very busy area where it's not as easy, where it's just you and another person and their dog. That it makes it much more difficult, and you have to understand and be aware of these variables.
So say you're introducing two dogs, or say it's a dog that you're possibly thinking about bringing into your home if it's going to, be a new member. What's how do what do you usually do when you introduce a dog to another dog that could possibly be a family member?
It really depends on the dog's age and the dog's history. For me personally, if it's a puppy, it's a much easier scenario than if it's a dog that's established and it's being rehomed and so forth.
Mhm.
Because usually puppies are more of a blank slate. So um, you can, depending in, obviously you're going to know your dog more. So you're going to know if your dog's a little more assertive towards other dogs or what have you. But it's always nice to meet in a neutral position initially if you can, and have control of both animals in a very, I guess, safe setting where there's controls on both ends. It's great if you can control the dog, but somebody else can't control the other dog, even if it's your wife holding your dog versus the new puppy. That can be a bad scenario too. So if you can do those things, that's the best way to do it and let them get acquainted. Otherwise, if you're bringing a new puppy home and you don't have a chance to do that, I always like to put the puppy in a crate and let dogs because we always have lots of dogs in our house, let them sniff the crate, get used to the smell, get used to the dog, you know, and then I don't immediately just open the crate, I basically let the dog be there for hours on top of hours. So they're used to it. And so it's not just like this foreign object that's just in their home.
Right.
And of course, then I introduce them each individual. I never introduced my dogs in big groups because that pack mentality can happen and another dog or a puppy can kind of get beat up and lost in translation.
Yeah. No,
So you got to be
that's a
very
good,
aware of that too.
yeah. No, that's really a good tip there.
Yeah.
Because the pack mentality, man.
And that's the thing. Dogs that are from the same household, 99% of the time, gang up together on a foreign dog if something goes south. So you always have to be aware that even though this might be your new dog, it's still a foreign dog to them at the current space.
Right. Exactly.
So again, that's one of the ways to do it. There's more different ways. It just depends. I'm always about safety first and about trying to be as neutral as possible first. And again, it, some people have like a dominant dog or a dog that's maybe not great, but they want to get another dog because the dog is getting up in age. That's a scenario that you got to be really careful with, because not all dogs are going to like each other. And just because you're bringing home a new puppy doesn't mean that this dog is going to like this dog and so you're going to have to slowly work that in and see how it all works out. And you have to be aware of those things. Everybody just wants to say, hey, it's going to be a happy family, but it's not the way it works.
No, they're like humans. They have personalities. They have that, whether it's the dog is alpha, versus beta, all that kind of stuff. It's so a lot of variables and make sure that they click.
The bottom line is if you're leading your dog and your dog respects you and they see you as the leader, that's going to go a long way when you're introducing your dog to other dogs and stuff. They're not going to be usually out of control and wild. They're going to be more respectful. So you want to be your dog's leader and your dog's advocate and know your different scenarios. Bringing a puppy home is one of the easier scenarios 99% of the time. Bringing home a rescue dog is much more difficult in an established pack. And just because it's a dog, it's not a puppy, it has its history, it has its likes and don't likes. Your dogs have their likes and don't likes. Then they're sharing you with this other dog. There's a lot of different things. This dog, you might be its savior, so maybe it tends to want to spend more time with you, and your dogs get jealous, or they start to resource guard. There's so many different scenarios that can happen. I wish all situations where it was just a big happy family, but unfortunately, that just doesn't work.
Yeah, no, we ran into that a lot. Like when we bring in fosters, because I had 7 of my own, and so when we were fostering other dogs and bringing in, like if they were rescues, like you said, you don't know their history, but we had one that was just they didn't have attention, their whole life, and so we're giving them attention, and if we gave attention to our other dogs, like that's when you snap and flip out and start attacking, So
scenarios like that, those are tough scenarios, and that's the whole thing about dog introductions. There's some variables that we're not always aware about.
Yeah.
And I think we've said this before. I don't know if people realize this, but a dog within 2 to 8 seconds knows if it likes another dog and wants to play or not. So when you're meeting another dog, say it's a successful meet and they sniff and they're good, and one dog's trying to, it has to have a place to, I don't want to say escape, but be able to get away from the situation, because your dog never wants to be trapped, because that's when the fight or flight comes in. And so don't try to force your dog into a relationship with another dog, because sometimes it just doesn't work. And, 50% of the time to 60% of the time, dogs don't want to hang out with each other.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's that one saying too, relationships, if you have to force it, shit,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
no,
don't force it.
And so even like, when I'm working with big groups of dogs, that I've already trained, and, it's almost like cliques. They'll split up into different cliques and hang out with the different, 3 or 4 dogs will hang over here and 3 or 4 dogs will hang over here. It's not like they're all in this one big, gigantic, happy, kumbaya song.
It's like high school.
Yeah. A lot like high school. Yeah. So, you need to be aware of those variables too, when introducing dogs. Old dogs versus young dogs, 2 old dogs who are very set in their ways, 2 young dogs that are hyper and reactive, then you have to, again, with their meeting, if you see 2 dogs, there's a lot of dogs have barrier reactivity. So like, if you're like, hey, I'm going to introduce them between the fence. Well, unless you have somebody on each side of the fence to make sure the dogs don't go ballistic, a lot of times dogs have this reactive thing going on with fences, and they'll run between back and forth. Not that they want to kill each other, but they look like they want to kill each other.
Oh yeah, well you haven't seen that video? We should have we should get that one up. It was they were this person was just taking a video. They were walking past this driveway that had a fence, and there was one break in the fence, and the dog was barking and aggressive. One is behind the fence, and it keeps walking. There's a big space, stops, and then goes to the other side of the fence and starts barking. He's completely sweet and
Yeah.
like a gentle angel right in between. Is like
Yeah,
he wasn't
just,
trying to attack, but like you said, it's that barrier.
yeah. So that's just barrier reactivity, which you can work on with that. That's something that's very workable to to get rid of, or at least tone down quite a bit, depending
Yeah.
on how much effort. Again, just like anything in dog training or anytime, the more effort you put in, the better your results are going to be. Not everything might be perfect, but it's going to give you more control than you had, and that's the key, is always to have control. Again, so when dogs are meeting dogs or people are meeting dogs, it's all about controlling the situation to have the best outcome.
Yep. I concur with all of that.
Well, thanks. You've been a great help. So,
Sounding bored here, but yeah, it's like I said, just seeing it live in person where dogs will just go at it if they're not introduced properly, and going through that negative outcome of having to deal with that. I'm a big promoter of everything that you just said and doing it properly to avoid all of that.
well, and that's, we're going to touch on this a little bit. That's like when people go to dog parks, and unless they're a controlled dog park, like with dog rangers, they're just the free dog parks. In idea, they're great. They're fantastic in the idea of it. I mean, but in the reality of it, they're super dangerous places.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Especially if their owners are oblivious and not paying attention
well, exactly.
on their phones. Yeah.
Yeah, they use it as a way for them to take a break, but they're not actually watching their dog, making sure their dog's behaving, acting properly. And unfortunately, hundreds of dogs are killed at dog parks each year. And I don't know if people are aware of that. It's quite common for dog fights and dog deaths to happen at dog parks. I'm not a big advocate of dog parks unless it's in a controlled environment with temperament testing. But free parks, again, like I said, the idea is great, but there's no temperament testing. Anybody can show up. Anybody can do what they want. If your dog's a bully, in the sense that it bullies other dogs and stuff, and if a dog reacts back, it's your fault. But depending on who's the bigger dog, that's going to be the problem dog. There's just a lot of negatives that go into that. Like for me personally, what I like to do, especially, is to use the dog parks as a way to, I walk around dog parks with dogs, and I allow dogs to see other dogs. And so if you do want to make an introduction outside the fence to see how they react, but it's when you put it in there, it's like, the Royal Rumble. It's just everybody goes for it or whatever. And some people do it in groups. Like I've seen people, like they'll have 4 or 5 people in there, dogs hugging along, they go out, and that's great for them. But then if you get introduced another couple dogs and it doesn't work, it's a bad situation.
Yeah, it ruins the party because there was we used to have so there used to be a dog park, and then there's just like this empty space, and that's where the neighborhood dogs would kind of go. But they all knew each other. They were already all introduced. You kind of, were raised together. Different scenario than if you are going to the dog park because, like you said, pack mentality, and if they're in there, not a lot of supervision, and also too like they're dirty. A lot of diseases and stuff get picked up there.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't even think about those things too. From sharing water bowls, they can get mouth warts and all those other types of things. And yeah,
Warts?
yeah, mouth warts. Yeah. It's very common actually in communal things with dogs. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's very treatable, but it's kind of gross.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah.
Just a little bit. So again, now like a dog park is just a dog on dog interaction or introduction with no human, interaction, basically to supervise. I don't think that's the safest way to do things. I don't advocate that I mean, it's for me, again, it's a safety issue. If you have a really well-behaved dog, I'll call it a mature dog too, and he's off leash, it's if they can meet off leash, that's great. If you have 2 well-behaved dogs, because if they don't like each other, they'll just smell and go their other way. But if one is not as well adjusted as the other, it can turn into something nasty. But you always want the option that they have a way to escape the situation without having a negative consequence. And so when people force these interactions and, the dogs are getting tangled up and they're getting riled up and what they need to do is scoop their dog up or grab it. They each need to grab it, not just like, oh, just try to, just grab your dog, get them out of the situation. Mm-hmm. That's the safest thing to do.
You know, question for you, when kind of going back when you were introducing the dogs, what do you think about when you are doing like a parallel walk? So you just say it's you and me, and our dogs have never been introduced before. Would you just gradually just kind of walk like with having like separations, they're not near together, and just have it where it's more a casual thing?
What you're saying. That's more of an ideal way. You know what I mean? Because the dogs have a chance to be around each other, to sniff each other, to see each other, know that there's no issues, and they can walk by each other.
They're not forced. You know,
they're not forced, and they also have a way to escape.
Yeah.
They're not forced to be like right next to each other. It's even like when I work with highly reactive dogs, one of the steps is once you get to a certain point is you start walking them like that with other dogs and making sure they don't have reactive episodes. And that's how you kind of desensitize them to all that. A lot of dogs, they're reactive, but they're not reactive in the sense that they're trying to do harm. They just don't know any other behavior. And that's the key with introducing dogs or working with dogs that are reactive to other dogs, or they're reactive to people, or they're reactive to barriers. There's so many types of reactivity you have to be aware of. And dogs are quirky. Sometimes you're like, it comes out of the clear blue, like, where'd that come from? So you have to be aware of that. And again, the better you know your dog, the better and easier these interactions become when you're meeting other dogs.
Yeah, because like I said, you don't want to go south and end up with a mess that you have to kind of take care of. So
yeah,
but just understand, like you said, understanding your dog, knowing your dog. Like I know if a small child is about to approach that's really hyper, I have to pick up Billy, because I know she won't react well to that.
Well, again, that's knowing your dog too, and that's the key, because especially small dogs, when you introduce them to children, children are herky jerky, quick movements, things that startle dogs, and they can have a defensive reaction to it. Younger dogs are always a little bit easier with that because it's not as severe, but an older dog who hasn't had those interactions in the past, that's very stressful for them. Sometimes meeting other dogs for your dog is stressful. Sometimes it's not. Just depends on the circumstance. It's all about knowing your dog, reading your dog. The only problem is on blind scenarios where you don't know other people, or you're at a park or never, and you guys, oh, it's a pretty dog, and you guys want to talk or something. You don't know anything about the other person and how they handle their dog. The only thing you know is what you're looking at.
Exactly.
Yep. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But again, as long as you're always worried about your dog first and foremost, and everything comes secondary after that, it can be, pleasant. Like I've been on walks in the Sweetwater Park area here, and I'll have one or two dogs with me, and people are, they'll say, oh, their dogs are so well behaved, or this or that. And they're like, can we walk with you? And I'm like, yeah, I'll just, I have them start on the outside and kind of see how they work. And so, now I've too, with a lot of clients, I do pack walks with them, and all the dogs get along. They all know their place. They're all respectful. They all know how to meet. It's just like, you have to do the right things and build that community too. If you're in a community of dogs that all behave, it makes it much easier to keep doing the things we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Because I remember we went to the walk with a lot of the clients on a Sunday, and we got to the water. But it's just so cool to see every different size dog, type of breed dog, just enjoying the day and hanging out, and everyone was on their leash and behaved well. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I enjoy doing that with my clients too. You get like 20 or 30 of them out there, and they all, and it's nice too, because you get to interact, the dogs get to interact. It's a beautiful setting. It's very Zen like, and people are like minded. It just makes it an enjoyable experience for everybody involved.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's so good to have part of, like, the socialization thing, but also just getting the dogs out of the house and just kind of being able to interact like that. It's just so very therapeutic, and they need it.
Yeah.
So do I.
I think we all do a little bit. So you have any more questions about how to meet dogs? Any dog
Gosh,
introductions?
I'm that person that gets so excited when I see a dog. So like I always had to make sure I keep my hands close,
Keep your hands to yourself.
keep my hands to myself. But yeah, no, I just think it's great that all the points that you touched on because it's so true. It's just you gotta hold back the excitement. But I always first thing is know your dog, communicate with the other owner. Make sure they're friendly instead of just rapidly approaching and just being aware of your surroundings.
Yeah. So, you know, kind of to wrap it up a little bit, we'll talk about each point a little bit. So if you're in the situation where you're dogless and you want to meet another dog, first and foremost, make sure you have permission to do that, because I have more people that don't have permission walk up to me when I have, a leash that says in training, do not pet, come up and just try to pet the dog. So don't be that person. So, and when you do meet a dog, like I said, give the dog some space, let the dog come to you, keep your hand in a fist. Don't pat on top of their head. Let the dog sniff you first.
That's interesting about the pat on the head thing. I didn't know that was
Yeah,
a
because remember,
dominance
you're always,
move.
well, I would hope you're always taller than a dog. So coming over the top, that's why dogs are always doing this. They don't like that.
Yeah.
It's a dominant behavior. Just like when another dog puts its head over the back of another dog's neck and pushes down, that's a dominant behavior. It's the same thing basically you're doing by patting the head.
Okay.
So yeah, that movement was interesting. Um, so yeah, you have to
Yeah.
be aware of that. So when you're meeting dogs, don't bare your teeth at a dog. Even though you think you're smiling, you're like this, but if you have a dog that's a little bit on the, aggressive side, he might see that as a challenge. So I would hope their owner would say, "Hey, my dog's not friendly. Don't come by me." But you
But
never
can
know.
you explain that a little bit for people who might not know why is that?
Well, when dogs don't like something, what do? They bare their teeth. They
Okay.
stare and they bare their teeth. They're
But
letting you
why
know.
should someone not smile? Is there something about showing the teeth?
Well, it's the same thing. If you're staring at a dog and you're smiling, again, at a dog you don't know, it's the same as a dog looking at you with its lip raised. Same thing.
So that's okay.
Yeah. So basically, it's a challenge.
Gotcha. It's
So,
on.
and it's okay to smile if you're not staring directly at the dog. And eventually, when you get to know a dog, you can smile and they don't care. Like I smile at my dogs all the time, but they're not. They know it's not a challenge.
Right.
So just things like that. You know, some people think totally different. Or like, yeah, you can do whatever. You know, you can smile, you can walk over, you can do. Again,
But that's really interesting because honestly, like I'm the asshole that's probably smiling when I see a dog. So it's
again,
good to
if
know.
again, smile. There's nothing wrong. Maybe I'm not being clear. It's nothing wrong smiling, but you can't lock eyes with a dog and stare at the dog while you're doing that.
Exactly.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to get at. You can
No,
look at a dog and smile, but I don't want you locking eyes with a dog.
I
Like,
know, but I'm saying that's probably me because I get so entranced when I see a dog. So
like
yeah.
I know a lot of people that don't have experience with dogs, and I see them do this all the time. They stare at the dog, like right into the dog's eyes, like they're trying to make contact with like a human.
Yeah.
You don't do that to a dog you don't know.
Oh no.
That's super dangerous.
Yeah.
You should kind of ignore the dog, look away, whatever. You don't want to stare directly at a dog because you're challenging that dog.
Yeah.
So, just a little dog etiquette 101. Some people have never been around dogs. Since we're in an urban area, a lot of people have never been around dogs on a regular basis. They might have seen them and stuff, but when they get around them, they don't know how to act. They don't know
Yeah.
what to do. They don't know anything about them.
Oh yeah.
And, if you're from the rural or country areas, it's like, you're used to it.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. It's like too, some people in the city have never seen a cow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm from the Midwest. Originally I'm from Wisconsin. So I've seen everything. I've seen all types of animals.
Well, it's funny. I'm from upstate New York, and my high school is right next to a farm.
Well, there you go. So
So
you get to see the animals and keep the smell. Good for you.
yes, smell the manure every morning.
So,
Yes.
but so yeah, so that's in my opinion, that's a proper way to meet another dog or meet a dog if you're solo. Dog on dog interactions. Be an advocate for your dog. Give them the space. Let the dogs come together on their own. Don't force them together. If a dog is a little skittish, make sure you give them room to be able to remove themselves from the situation or help the dogs remove themselves from the situations. Don't let them get all tied up in the leashes. Keep them at a respectful distance. I know people let them, oh, they're sniffing and all of a sudden their leash is all tangled up. Try to avoid those situations. That just leads to, if a dog gets tied up, they have no place to escape from, and it can turn into a negative situation. So I just want you to be aware of those types of things. Side by side walking is a good way for dogs to eventually meet. So you get used to them. The more you desensitize a dog to another dog that's around, the more apt they will be to meet in a positive term. So those are just some of the tidbits we have for you guys today about dog introductions. And again, we talked about, introducing a puppy to your at home, those are all different things. Again, if you have questions about that or comments about that, just put them below. We'll be happy to answer them. If you agree with us, great. If you have a different way, put it down there. We'll share it with people. This just seems to be the way that worked for us, and it has worked for us for a long amount of time. Again, there's a million different ways to skin a cat. And so that probably sounded bad, but
That's because it's probably
a million different ways to skin a chicken. I don't know. Either way, it doesn't matter. But so yeah, so be aware that there's always more than one right way. And if somebody says there's only one right way, they're wrong. So that's because they have a limited box they live in. So, but make sure you like, you subscribe, write your questions. Again, we'll love to answer them, bring them up. Anything you guys want to hear about, we'll love to talk about. Because remember, this is everything and anything dogs. So any type of situation you want to talk about, from toys to, treats to, raw feeding versus
to anal glands being ruptured.
Yeah. To anal glands, we're happy to do it. So, but we appreciate you tuning in. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks.